Mistaken destiny. Naomi Reed clutched her worn portfolio case, glancing at her watch for the 5th time in as many minutes. The receptionist at Meridian Staffing had said 10th floor, hadn't she? But the sleek lobby directory listed them on the 14th. With only 7 minutes until her interview, Naomi jabbed the elevator button, mentally rehearsing answers to potential questions. After 6 months of rejections, this administrative assistant position wasn't her dream job, but it would pay the rent that was already 2 weeks overdue. The elevator doors opened to a minimalist reception area with Horizon Innovations emblazoned on the wall in brushed metal letters. Naomi approached the receptionist, a woman with immaculate makeup and a polite smile. "Hi, I'm here for the 10 o'clock interview. Your name, please?" "Naomi Reed." The receptionist's fingers danced across her keyboard. "I don't see you scheduled. Who's your interview with?" Naomi's stomach dropped. "I'm sorry, I thought this was Meridian Staffing." "That's the 14th floor," the woman said with practiced patience. "This is Horizon Innovations." "Oh no," Naomi whispered, feeling heat rise to her cheeks. "I'm so sorry for the confusion. I'll just... Reed? Did you say Naomi Reed?" The voice came from behind her. Naomi turned to find a tall man with kind eyes and a slightly rumpled suit, looking at her with unexpected interest. "Yes, that's me. But I'm in the wrong place. I should be at Meridian Staffing." The man studied her portfolio case. "Are you a designer?" "I was. I am. But the market's tough right now, so I'm applying for admin work." He extended his hand. "Jackson Wells, CEO of Horizon. We actually had a design candidate no-show this morning. Mind if I see your portfolio while you're here?" Naomi hesitated. This wasn't how interviews were supposed to happen. But what did she have to lose? Sure, why not?" Jackson led her to a conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Naomi fumbled with her portfolio, acutely aware of her discount store blazer and scuffed shoes. "I should mention that these designs are a bit experimental. My last employer wanted more conventional work, which is why you're no longer there," Jackson finished, flipping through her designs with unexpected interest. "Their loss, I'd say." He paused at a series of brand explorations Naomi had done for a theoretical eco-friendly tech company. "This is exactly the direction we've been struggling with for the Verdant project." Naomi leaned forward. "The color psychology there is deliberate. Traditional tech companies use blue for trust. But I incorporated forest greens with geometric patterns to blend innovation with sustainability." Jackson studied her face, then the designs again. "You know, Ms. Reed, sometimes the universe has a peculiar way of correcting our paths." "Meaning?" "Meaning our design director has been pushing cookie-cutter concepts for weeks. We need fresh vision, and you just walked through the wrong door with exactly what we need." Naomi's heart raced. "Are you offering me an interview for a design position?" "I'm offering you a 2-week project starting today. If your work continues to impress me, we can discuss something permanent. But I'm not prepared. I don't have references ready or..." Jackson smiled, revealing a dimple in his right cheek. "Sometimes preparation is overrated. Sometimes it's about being in the wrong place at exactly the right time." Naomi's phone buzzed with a reminder for her Meridian interview. She glanced at it, then back at Jackson, who was already clearing a space at the conference table. "So," he said, "are you going to call and cancel your admin interview, or should I?" For the first time in months, Naomi felt a genuine smile spread across her face. "I'll make the call." The temporary workspace assigned to Naomi was a glass-walled office tucked between the design department and executive row, symbolic of her undefined position at Horizon Innovations. As she arranged her meager supplies on the desk, she caught curious glances from employees passing by. 3 days into her 2-week project, Naomi still felt like an imposter who had stumbled into someone else's life. Morning. "Wrong door," called Dominic Patel, the marketing director, using the nickname that had quickly spread through the office. His tone was friendly, but Naomi detected an undercurrent of skepticism. "Jackson wants the preliminary concepts by lunch. Think you can manage that?" "They were ready yesterday," Naomi replied, sliding a folder across her desk. "I was just refining some details." Dominic's eyebrows rose as he flipped through her work. "These are unexpected." "That's the point," Naomi said with more confidence than she felt. "The Verdant project needs to stand out in the sustainable tech space." "Jackson seems to think you're some kind of design savant," Dominic remarked, closing the folder. The team's curious why he bypassed our usual hiring process for you. Naomi swallowed hard. I'm just here for 2 weeks. Then things go back to normal. Nothing's normal when Jackson gets one of his hunches, Dominic said, tapping the folder against his palm. Just be prepared for the executive meeting. Eleanor Frost isn't as easily charmed as our CEO. After he left, Naomi slumped in her chair. Eleanor Frost, Horizon's formidable COO, had a reputation for ruthless efficiency. The prospect of presenting to her sent a wave of anxiety through Naomi's already frayed nerves. At precisely noon, Naomi entered the executive conference room clutching her tablet and a small portfolio of printed designs. Jackson sat at the head of the table, engaged in quiet conversation with a striking woman with silver-streaked dark hair, Eleanor Frost herself. Ah, Naomi, Jackson said, his face brightening. Perfect timing. We were just discussing the verdant timeline. Eleanor's piercing gaze assessed Naomi. So, you're our serendipitous discovery. Jackson says you walked into the wrong interview and the right career. I hope to prove that's true, Naomi replied, setting up her presentation. As Naomi walked through her concepts, she focused on the practical applications rather than abstract design theory. She explained how each element served the product's eco-friendly mission, while maintaining the technological edge Horizon was known for. The problem with most green tech branding, Naomi explained, displaying a competitor analysis, is that it either looks too corporate to appeal to environmentalists or too earthy to attract tech enthusiasts. My approach bridges that gap, Eleanor interrupted. And how would this translate to product design? Our hardware team has parameters. Naomi hadn't anticipated this question, but inspiration struck. She quickly sketched on her tablet, projecting a modified version of Horizon's flagship device incorporating her design elements. Like this, she said, rotating the 3D model she'd created on the fly. The recycled materials actually become a feature rather than a limitation. A slight smile tugged at Eleanor's lips. Impressive adaptation. Though I wonder if you'd be so quick on your feet with a more complex challenge. Try me, Naomi responded before she could stop herself. Eleanor exchanged a look with Jackson, who was watching the interaction with undisguised amusement. Very well, Eleanor said. The Singapore conference is in 10 days. Our presentation needs complete overhaul after the new product developments. Jackson, I believe Ms. Reed would be an asset on this trip given her unique perspective, Jackson nodded. Excellent idea. Naomi, can you extend your project to include the conference? Naomi's mind raced. Singapore? An international business conference? Her passport was buried in a drawer, unused since a college trip to Mexico. I'd need to check some personal commitments, she hedged, thinking of her upcoming rent deadline. We'll cover all expenses, Jackson said, plus an appropriate compensation package for the extended project. After the meeting, Jackson walked Naomi back to her temporary office. That went well, he said. Eleanor doesn't suggest international travel for just anyone. I can't help feeling this is all happening too fast, Naomi admitted. Last week I was applying for admin jobs and now I'm potentially flying to Singapore for a tech conference. Jackson stopped at her door. Sometimes opportunities don't follow conventional timelines. The question is whether you're brave enough to grab them when they appear. Even if I'm not qualified? Especially then, he said with a gentle smile. The most interesting journeys begin when we step beyond our qualifications. That evening, Naomi sat in her small apartment surrounded by past due notices, staring at the contract Jackson had given her. The compensation for the extended project would cover her rent for 3 months. But accepting meant stepping further into a world where she felt like a fraud, a world where Jackson Wells looked at her with expectations she wasn't sure she could fulfill. Her phone chimed with a text from an unknown number. The Singapore team is excited to meet our secret weapon. Ticket booked for next Friday, say yes. Jackson. Naomi took a deep breath and signed the contract, wondering if she was making the biggest mistake of her career, or finally finding the path she was meant to follow all along. Either way, there was no turning back now. Unveiled truths. The Singapore Airlines cabin hummed with quiet efficiency as Naomi adjusted her seat. First class, a luxury she had never experienced before. Across the aisle, Jackson typed rapidly on his laptop, his focus intense. They had barely spoken during the pre-flight chaos, and Naomi wondered if he was regretting his impulsive decision to bring her. First time flying internationally for business? Jackson asked, finally closing his computer. Naomi nodded. First time flying first class, period. My design career mostly involved Zoom calls and local clients. Well, consider this your baptism by fire, Jackson said, accepting a drink from the flight attendant. The Verdant project represents a significant pivot for Horizon. Our investors are watching closely. No pressure or anything, Naomi muttered, earning a chuckle from Jackson. You know, I've been meaning to ask, why were you applying for administrative jobs when your design work is clearly exceptional? Naomi hesitated, then decided honesty was her best approach. 6 months ago, I was the creative director at Prism Design Studio. Small firm, but we had solid clients. Then we lost our biggest account to an overseas agency charging half our rates. The company folded and suddenly no one was hiring mid-level creative directors during an economic downturn. So you adapted, Jackson observed. I tried, but 50 rejections later I started applying for anything that would pay rent. She twisted her watch, a gift from her grandfather, and the last valuable thing she hadn't sold. Pride doesn't keep a roof over your head. Jackson studied her thoughtfully. Resilience is underrated in the corporate world. We're so focused on success stories that we forget the value of survival stories. Something in his tone made Naomi look closer. Behind his confident exterior, she detected a familiar weariness. And what's your story? She asked. How does someone your age end up CEO of a company like Horizon? A shadow crossed Jackson's face. The abbreviated version? I co-founded Horizon with my best friend from college, Trevor Phillips. He was the visionary. I was the one who made his visions practical. 3 years ago, Trevor died unexpectedly. Heart condition no one knew about. The board appointed me CEO because I understood his vision better than anyone. I'm sorry, Naomi said softly. That must have been incredibly difficult. The hardest part was continuing his legacy while finding my own path forward. The Verdant project was supposed to be our next chapter together. He paused, seeming surprised by his own candor. I don't usually discuss this. Airplane confidentiality, Naomi suggested. Like Vegas, what's said at 35,000 feet stays there. Jackson smiled, the tension easing from his shoulders. In that case, I should mention that Eleanor thinks I'm making a mistake with you. Because I'm unproven? Because she thinks I'm confusing professional potential with personal interest. The implications hung in the air between them. Naomi felt her cheeks warm, grateful for the dimmed cabin lights. And are you? She asked, her voice barely audible over the engine noise. Jackson held her gaze. I've learned to trust my instincts in business. But this feels different. The moment was interrupted by turbulence, causing Naomi to grip her armrests. Jackson's hand covered hers briefly, a reflexive gesture of reassurance that ended as quickly as it began. We should review the presentation, he said, his professional demeanor returning. The Verdant project deserves our full attention. In Singapore, they were swept into a whirlwind of meetings and site visits. Naomi's designs received enthusiastic responses from the Asian market representatives, who appreciated her fusion of technological sleekness with environmental consciousness. Even Eleanor, joining them via video conference, seemed grudgingly impressed. On their third evening, after a particularly successful presentation, Jackson suggested they celebrate at the hotel's rooftop garden. Under a canopy of stars with the Singapore skyline glittering around them, the line between colleagues and something more began to blur. You've exceeded every expectation, Jackson said, raising his glass to hers. The board is considering implementing your designs across the entire product line. That's incredible, Naomi replied, the reality of her sudden success still feeling dreamlike. But what happens after the 2-week project ends? I go back to job hunting? Jackson set down his glass. I've been thinking about that. Horizon needs someone with your vision. I'd like to offer you a permanent position as our creative director. Naomi stared at him in disbelief. That's a significant leap from temporary project designer. Horizon was built on significant leaps, Jackson said. The question is whether you're ready to take one. Their conversation wandered into personal territory as the night progressed. Naomi spoke of her childhood in a small town, where her artistic talents had been simultaneously encouraged and dismissed as impractical. Jackson revealed the pressures of living up to a legacy that wasn't originally meant to be his. As they walked back to their rooms, the hallway between their doors became a threshold neither seemed eager to cross. Singapore suits you, Jackson said softly. You seem to have found your confidence here. Maybe it's not Singapore, Naomi replied. Maybe it's the company. Jackson stepped closer, his professional reserve finally slipping. Naomi, his phone rang shrilly, breaking the moment. Jackson checked the screen and frowned. It's Eleanor. She wouldn't call this late unless it's important. Naomi nodded, stepping back. You should take that. We have the final presentation tomorrow anyway. This conversation isn't finished, Jackson said, his eyes conveying what words couldn't. But as Naomi closed her door, she wondered if they had already crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed, and whether their professional future would survive the truths unveiled at 35,000 feet and under Singapore stars. Crossroads, the Singapore conference concluded with a resounding success. Naomi's designs for the Verdant project had garnered attention from tech publications and environmental organizations alike, positioning Horizon Innovations as a pioneer in sustainable technology. Yet as their flight touched down in the States, the warm camaraderie that had developed between Naomi and Jackson in Singapore seemed to cool with each mile that brought them closer to corporate reality. Eleanor Frost was waiting for them in the arrivals terminal, her expression unreadable. Welcome back. The board is quite pleased with the reception in Asia. She handed Jackson a tablet displaying press coverage. We've scheduled a full presentation for tomorrow morning. We just landed, Jackson protested. Surely the board can wait 48 hours. The board isn't the only one interested in your Singapore success, Eleanor replied, glancing pointedly at Naomi. Vincent Blackwood sent a representative to the conference. Apparently Prism's former creative director made quite an impression. Naomi froze at the mention of Blackwood. Industries, Horizon's largest competitor, and a company known for aggressively poaching talent. They reached out to you? Jackson asked, his voice carefully neutral. No, Naomi insisted. I had no idea they were even there. Eleanor's arched eyebrow conveyed skepticism. Well, they're aware of you now. Their VP of Acquisitions called this morning, fishing for information about your contract status. The drive to Horizon headquarters was tense. Naomi sat in the back of the company car, watching Jackson and Eleanor engage in hushed conversation in the front. She caught fragments about board concerns and conflict of interest that tightened the knot in her stomach. At the office, Dominic greeted them with nervous energy. The design team needs direction on implementing the Verdant aesthetics across product lines, he told Naomi. And Trevor's old office has been cleared for you, assuming you're accepting the creative director position. Trevor's office. The weight of that inheritance wasn't lost on Naomi. She glanced at Jackson, who was already being pulled into another conversation with the legal team. I haven't formally accepted yet, she told Dominic. You might want to decide quickly, he replied. Word travels fast in this industry. I heard Blackwood is preparing an offer. By afternoon, the rumors had multiplied. Naomi tried to focus on organizing the presentation materials, but her concentration was shattered when Phoebe Wong, the HR director, appeared at her temporary office door. Ms. Reed, do you have a moment? We should discuss your potential employment agreement. The conversation with HR was illuminating in unexpected ways. The offered salary was generous, but came with stringent non-compete clauses and intellectual property provisions that made Naomi uneasy. These terms seem unusually restrictive, she noted. Phoebe's smile was professional but cool. Mr. Wells insisted on expediting your hiring process, but the board has concerns about potential conflicts given the unusual circumstances of your arrival at Horizon. You mean they think I might have engineered our meeting? That I deliberately went to the wrong floor that day? The timing was certainly fortuitous, Phoebe replied, especially given your previous employment at Prism, which had connections to Blackwood Industries. Naomi stood abruptly. I need to speak with Jackson. She found him in the conference room surrounded by executives discussing the Verdant project launch. Their eyes met across the room and something in his expression shifted, a guardedness that hadn't been there in Singapore. Excuse me, she said to the group. I need a word with Mr. Wells. In the hallway, Naomi confronted him. Did you know about these contract terms? Or that your board thinks I'm some kind of corporate spy? Jackson sighed, running a hand through his hair. It's standard procedure when hiring from competitors. I didn't come from a competitor. I was unemployed, remember? Applying for an admin job because no one would hire me in design. Which makes your meteoric rise here all the more remarkable, came Eleanor's voice as she approached. The board simply wants to ensure your remarkable talents remain exclusively with Horizon. Naomi looked between them. And what about the rumored Blackwood offer? Was that a test to see if I'd bite? Vincent Blackwood did reach out, Jackson admitted. He suggested you might be more comfortable in an environment without personal complications. The implication hung in the air. Eleanor cleared her throat. I'll give you two a moment. When they were alone, Naomi lowered her voice. What happened to the person who talked about trusting instincts and taking leaps? Was Singapore just a fantasy that doesn't translate to real life? Singapore was, Jackson hesitated, complicated. I have responsibilities here, to the company, to Trevor's legacy. The board has questions about my judgment regarding your hiring, because of our personal connection, because I bypassed every protocol to bring you on board, and now our biggest competitor is suddenly interested in you. His expression softened. Naomi, I do want you here, but I need to know you're choosing Horizon for the right reasons. And what would those be? The opportunity? The challenge? She stepped closer. Or you? Before he could answer, Dominic appeared with urgent news. Blackwood just announced a sustainable tech initiative that looks suspiciously like our Verdant project. Their press release went live 10 minutes ago. Jackson's face hardened. Get the legal team. We need to determine if there's been a breach. The unspoken accusation in his glance toward Naomi felt like a physical blow. You can't possibly think I had anything to do with this, she said, but Jackson was already striding away, leaving her alone in the hallway. That evening, Naomi sat in Trevor Phillips's former office, her potential office, surrounded by empty shelves awaiting her personal touch. On her phone was an email from Vincent Blackwood himself, offering a position with complete creative freedom and a salary that exceeded Horizon's by 30%. The knock on her door was soft but determined. Jackson entered without waiting for a response, his expression troubled. Our legal team confirmed Blackwood's project has been in development for months. The similarities are concerning but not actionable. He paused. I owe you an apology for my reaction earlier. Naomi turned her phone screen down. You thought I betrayed you. After everything. I thought I might have let personal feelings cloud my professional judgment, he corrected. It wouldn't be the first time. What does that mean? Jackson sat heavily in the chair across from her. Trevor and I disagreed about Horizon's direction before he died. He wanted to pursue more sustainable initiatives. I focused on market expansion. When he passed, I channeled all my energy into proving his vision could succeed. The Verdant project. Yes. And then you appeared with exactly the perspective we needed. He met her gaze directly. The board thinks I see Trevor in you. That I'm trying to recapture something lost instead of making sound business decisions. And what do you think? Naomi asked softly. Jackson leaned forward. I think sometimes the universe puts the right person in the wrong place at exactly the right time. But I also think we're at a crossroads, Naomi. Professionally and personally. I got an offer from Blackwood, she admitted. Better money, fewer restrictions. I know, he replied. Vincent called to gloat. The silence between them stretched, filled with unspoken possibilities and unresolved tensions. What would you do? Naomi finally asked. If you were in my position? Jackson stood and moved toward the door. I'd remember that some choices define our path forward more than others. He paused, hand on the doorframe. The board meets tomorrow morning to discuss the Verdant project's future. Your decision about the creative director position would be clarifying. Before then. As the door closed behind him, Naomi turned to the window overlooking the city lights. Two paths stretched before her, security at Blackwood or uncertainty at Horizon. A calculated career move or a leap of faith towards something that had begun with a simple wrong turn. The choice, as Jackson had said, would define everything that followed. Full circle dawn broke over the city as Naomi stood in her apartment, surveying the space that had witnessed her lowest moments. 6 months of rejection letters were still pinned to her corkboard, a reminder of how quickly fortunes could change. Beside them hung her latest creation, comprehensive designs for Horizon's Verdant project, each element representing not just innovation but something more personal, a vision she and Jackson had crafted together in Singapore. The Blackwood contract sat unsigned on her kitchen counter. Its promises of security and creative freedom seemed hollow in the cold morning light. Naomi checked her watch, her grandfather's watch, noting she had exactly 90 minutes before the board meeting that would determine Horizon's direction. Her phone chimed with a message from Dominic. Boardroom filling up. Eleanor looking grim. "Where are you?" Instead of responding, Naomi made a different call. "Vincent? It's Naomi Reed. About your offer." 70 minutes later, Naomi stood outside Horizon's headquarters, gathering her courage. The security guard recognized her, offering a friendly nod as she entered. The elevator ride to the executive floor felt interminable, each floor bringing her closer to a moment that couldn't be undone. She could hear raised voices as she approached the boardroom. Through the glass walls, she saw Jackson standing at the head of the table, his expression tense as he faced down Eleanor and several board members. "The Verdant Project represents everything Trevor believed in," Jackson was saying as Naomi entered. "We can't abandon it because of competitive pressure." "It's not about abandoning the project," Eleanor countered. "It's about recognizing when we've been outmaneuvered. Blackwood has resources we don't, and now they've acquired—" She stopped abruptly, noticing Naomi. All heads turned. Jackson's face registered surprise, then something unreadable. "Ms. Reed," Eleanor said coolly, "we weren't expecting you." "Clearly," Naomi replied, moving to the front of the room. "But since you're discussing the Verdant Project, I thought I should be present." An older man, Chairman Randall Davis, Naomi recognized from her research, leaned forward. "We understood you'd accepted a position with Blackwood Industries." "That's the rumor," Naomi acknowledged. "But rumors can be misleading." Jackson's eyes narrowed. "Vincent called this morning to inform me personally that you'd taken his offer." "I spoke with Vincent, yes," Naomi confirmed, placing her portfolio on the table. "But not to accept his offer." She opened the portfolio, revealing not just the original Verdant designs, but a comprehensive expansion. Applications across Horizon's entire product line, including prototypes that hadn't yet been announced publicly. "What Vincent Blackwood doesn't understand," Naomi continued, "is that creativity isn't just about freedom or compensation. Sometimes it's about the right collaboration." She nodded toward Jackson. "Mr. Wells took a chance on someone who walked through the wrong door. That kind of instinctive leadership can't be bought." Eleanor studied the designs with evident surprise. "These extensions go well beyond your project parameters." "Because I wasn't approaching this as a 2-week project," Naomi explained. "I was looking at Horizon's future. A future I'd like to help build if the offer still stands." Chairman Davis examined the designs with interest. "These address the production concerns our team raised last week. How did you know about those issues?" "She didn't," Jackson interjected, a smile finally breaking through his guarded expression. "That's just who she is, someone who sees problems and opportunities no one else notices." The tension in the room gradually dissipated as Naomi walked the board through her vision for Horizon's Sustainable Technology Initiative. By the time she finished, even Eleanor was nodding with grudging approval. "Well," Chairman Davis said, "I believe our concerns about Ms. Reed's commitment have been addressed. Shall we proceed with the formal appointment?" After the meeting adjourned, Naomi found herself alone with Jackson in Trevor's former office. Her office now, according to the contract she'd just signed. "You let me believe you'd chosen Blackwood," Jackson said, leaning against the doorframe. "Why?" "I needed to be sure I was making this decision for the right reasons," Naomi replied. "Not just because of what happened in Singapore." Jackson stepped into the office, closing the door behind him. "And what were the right reasons?" "The Verdant Project, the opportunity to build something meaningful." She met his gaze directly. "And yes, the possibility of seeing where this goes, whatever this is between us." "The board will have concerns," Jackson warned, though his expression had softened. "Office relationships, especially between a CEO and a creative director. Let them concern themselves with the quarterly numbers," Naomi said with newfound confidence, "which, by the way, will exceed projections once." The Verdant line launches. Jackson laughed, the sound filling the space that had once belonged to his best friend. "You know, Trevor would have liked you. He always said I was too cautious, too focused on the safe path." "And what would he say about this situation?" Naomi asked, gesturing between them. "He'd say I finally found someone who makes me brave," Jackson replied, closing the distance between them. "Someone who reminds me why we built Horizon in the first place, to create something that matters." 6 months later, Naomi stood on a stage at the Consumer Electronics Expo, accepting the Innovation Award for the Verdant project. The sustainable technology line had exceeded even her optimistic projections, establishing Horizon as an industry leader in eco-conscious design. In the front row, Jackson watched with undisguised pride. Their relationship had evolved carefully, navigating the complexities of their professional roles while nurturing the connection that had begun with a wrong turn and flourished under Singapore stars. The Verdant project began as a vision for technology that respects our planet while enhancing our lives, Naomi told the audience. But its greater lesson might be about destiny, how sometimes we need to walk through the wrong door to find the right path. Later that evening, as they walked along the harbor front, Jackson took her hand. Have you ever wondered what would have happened if you'd found the right floor that day? If you'd gone to your original interview? Naomi smiled, remembering the nervous woman who had clutched her worn portfolio and stepped into the wrong elevator. I did find the right floor, she said. Just not the one I was looking for. Full circle, Jackson murmured, stopping to face her. From mistaken interview to industry award. Not quite full circle, Naomi corrected, reaching into her pocket and pulling out a small velvet box. Inside was his grandfather's watch, restored and engraved. I think we're just getting started. As Jackson opened the gift, his expression of surprise melting into deeper emotion, Naomi realized that sometimes life's most profound journeys begin with a simple mistake, that sometimes being lost is merely the first step to being found, and that walking through the wrong door can lead exactly where you're meant to be. In the harbor lights, with the weight of uncertainty finally lifted from her shoulders, Naomi embraced both the future she had designed and the love that had begun with the simple words, I'm here for the 10 o'clock interview. The universe, it seemed, had a peculiar way of correcting paths indeed.